we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to let my amazing speakers today, Mr. Brian Zimprich from Ransom County and Dr. Hoffman, introduce themselves and kick off today's Coaches 101 webinar, and we're covering livestock and Quiz Bowl today.
Good evening. My name is Brian Zimprich, and I serve as the county agent down in Ransom County, Southeast North Dakota, and I will be one of your presenters this evening.
Good evening, Dr. Travis Hoffman. I serve as the North Dakota State University and the University of Minnesota Extension Sheep Specialist, and glad to share the floor with Mr. Zimprich, and appreciate all the help that we've had from our whole team on putting these together, and look forward to being the kickoff for our NDSU Extension Coaches 101 seminars. And so with that, again, I appreciate all that we have involved. And in fact, I'll take just a moment, even though we have it on the screen there. Our team is Mr. Rick Schmidt, Kurt Freilich, Mr. Brian Zimprich, who's joining me as the co-presenter, Paige Brummond, Emily Burkett, myself, Dr. Leanne Skurupey, who's also serving as our moderator this evening, Brianna Kaiser, Rachel Wald, Sarah Clemens, Shandy Howard, Renee Gress, Tessa Osterbauer, and Sarah Crimmins. And so thankful that just I'm a spoke in the wheel and get the opportunity to help lead off this evening's first event of our webinar series. And so I've been tasked with, first off, again, providing the topic outline for our livestock judging. And in fact, for the most part, I will present that information, and then Mr. Zimprich will provide our livestock quiz bowl. We'll talk on both of our divisions of what those contest rules are and what resources are available. More specific to our judging program will be on note-taking and reasons, expected progeny differences, and give a quick example that we do have. And then we will switch and transition towards some of our quiz bowl. And that's one of the things that, in fact, Dr. Skurupey has helped us to design and add, so that when we have our state 4-H livestock judging contest on a Saturday, now for several years, we've had the quiz bowl that also has some opportunities within our state and nationally for us to compete for, and then kind of follow up with some of the recruitments for the programs, and then some of the question and answer portions. We will look forward to opening that up. And in fact, again, we have a talented group that can help us to answer some of those questions that we may have. We have to realize that this isn't even in a 1-hour approach fully comprehensive, but we're going to do the best we can to identify some of the things that we can kind of move forward with.
So one thing, Travis, when going through this, just keep in mind when we go through the rules of our contest, these are North Dakota specific rules, and we know that we have some other states joining in. So keep that in mind. You may want to go back to your specific states to understand what your contest rules would apply to each of these contests. So
thank you, Brian, for providing that point of information. And as we discuss livestock judging, a couple of different things that we're interested in is first off, some of the ages and who's available and what we can be able to kind of move forward, and when some of our contests are. And so for the North Dakota State 4-H contest, our state contest is March 5th in 2022 of this year. And so that will be at our Shepherd Arena that's on campus. We have 2 divisions, a junior division and a senior division, and different with some other states. They may have a beginner and an intermediate and a senior, or wherever that may be. And so check with those of how it fits. This is how it's described in ours. One of the things that we're most excited about, and the reason that we and myself and others on my team to help put together our state 4-H contest of why it's so important is that we get to identify those that get to compete at national contests. And when they compete at national contests, the first and foremost and most prestigious opportunity as a 4-H livestock judger is to defend your talents at the North American International Livestock Exposition that's held normally the second week of November in Louisville, Kentucky. We also have the option to send our second place team to the Western National Roundup that has been in Denver, Colorado, and that's in January. And so one of the big things is obviously it's not only an individual competition, but also a team approach. And that's certainly important for everything that we do here within our 4-H program, is identifying those that can reach the utmost quality and talent levels and be able to push on and represent North Dakota. In fact, we've had great teams that have kind of pushed through and moved forward as well. And so again, in fact, we had one that tied here for second place at the Western National Roundup, and in fact had some placing individuals at Louisville, Kentucky. And so we're excited about our 4-Hers and thankful that you guys as coaches can offer some time for us to join either tonight, or if you're listening to this after the fact, thanks for watching it as well. And first off, describe just a little bit of the contest rules of our junior division. As stated, those are 8 to 13 years of age as of the end of the calendar year. And so what we've done at North Dakota is keep it as a little bit of a stepping stone. And we say that because that allows us to offer those young people that are 13 years of age and younger to play 6 classes. Commonly, those have been classes, obviously, that are a subset of the 10 classes that we'd previously put together. Each of those classes is worth 50 points. And those classes, truthfully, can be any combination of breeding or market for beef animals, for swine, for sheep, and also for goats. And so obviously, even with those, we can't accomplish all 8, but we try to get a combination of those portions within our judging contest that represents, truthfully, some of the better classes and some of the potentially more placeable classes for those young people. But we also know that it's important to challenge them. And in fact, some say that maybe it's not time for reasons yet. And I truthfully just disagree, because I think there's no better time to start than when you're 8 years old, so that you feel a little bit more seasoned and a little bit more talented as you move through it. And so each of those individuals that are in our junior division will give 3 sets of oral reasons. And then, as pointed there, we normally keep those between 1 beef, 1 swine set of oral reasons, and then 1 of either sheep or goats right now, and in comparison. And in fact, it's been a fun evolution to pull goats into our programs and as well, because those are offered at national contests now. And so we like to make sure that we can provide those, and then we will identify what those are. And there will be a combination of breeding and or market. And so, for example, they might be breeding heifers, market steers, and breeding ewes, or some combination, or breeding heifers, market hogs, and market goats, or whatever that may be. So we appreciate everybody getting ready, and of course, just a little bit of the excitement of not knowing exactly what's coming to you, but being prepared for all of those as coaches, of whether those are breeding or market for all of the 4 individual species. Our senior division, as we think about that, is from 14 years of age or over. And so if we have those on the senior division, those will be given a little bit more of the portion that we can be able to evaluate. And Brian, if you want to move on to our senior division, those historically had been 9 to 10. Truthfully, we currently aim for 10 placing classes. And so each of those classes, again, will consist of 4 animals. And the way that we ideally put it, particularly here for calendar year 2022, is probably 3 beef, 3 swine, 3 sheep, and 1 goat. And so that at least offers us some opportunities to be able to kind of fill those out. We have the flexibility if contests or if classes make it so that maybe we have better cattle classes, that we can move that up to 4 if we so aspire. But for the most part, we try to keep that as balanced as we can. Those seniors will also give 3 sets of oral reasons, and then and a similar designation of 1 beef, 1 swine, and 1 sheep or goat. Additionally, with the livestock contest is that there's 1 questions class that is determined by the officials, but yet designated to those coaches on the night before, of which that questions class will be. And if we think of it from a North American International Livestock Exposition, is that there's a greater amount of oral reasons, and there's also 2 questions classes. And so we're just getting a subset of those, but still hopefully allowing our best young people to move forward and to mark the best cards and provide the best reasons, and in fact also do some questions. And so we try to mirror it as close as we possibly can relative to the logistics of a specific day. One of the things as we look at it from our contest rules is that official 4-H dress should be worn. And so with that in North Dakota, that means that you are wearing a top or with a 4-H emblem on it, whether it's on there or at least have a badge or pin that can be used to represent that you are part of the 4-H program. Some so choose to, in fact, wear suit coats that have a 4-H emblem on it. But individuals, first off, must be willing to wear the 4-H dress when they're providing and being a part of our contest. Individuals will get 12 minutes to judge each of the classes, and in fact, that allows them the opportunity. And of course, we have a minimum of 20 minutes to prep for reasons, but truthfully, we aim closer to 30, and probably it even allows just a little bit more. We don't want to manage us out of a challenge of where we could be. And so most of the time, they'll get more than that within our specific contest. Of course, no electronic devices. We don't need anybody to have their cell phones or be using those. And we discriminate against individuals talking with our other contestants. And what we've been able to use is judgingcard.com, and certainly provides us a Scantron that they can be able to mark the placings of each specific classes of those, if up with our seniors up to 10 classes, and with our juniors up to 6 classes. And then we'll record those and we'll put those in with our reasons, our oral reasons and our check type reasons to be able to pull that through, gather that information, and provide timely results to our young people and to our coaches, so that you have a great experience at NDSU, but also can get back home as soon as and efficient as possibly we can on March 5th. So some of the resources that are available, and in fact, we show they're actually on the bottom is a class of hogs that we've got that people can kind of dig through, and some of those that some of our coaches have found is livestockjudging.com and judgingpro.com. And in fact, if we look at that in terms of the cost of $200 or $250 per year, what I can tell you of what those groups and different online groups have done is that it's absolutely a great option, particularly as we're digging here into February 2022 in North Dakota, America, is that it's a little bit brisk outside. And so some contests and some classes and some practices can be accomplished through utilization of those. And if you can fit those into your budget with your extension programming or talking, or maybe see if you can find a sponsor, it allows you unlimited resources to be able to pull together a lot of classes and say, hey, here's the Charolais steer class, go judge that one, or here's the Hampshire breeding gilts and go judge that one. And those come with officials as well. And we'll show you an example of that at the later part of this. We've had a whole bunch of talented people come through North Dakota State University Animal Sciences. And with that, we have a livestock judging terminology manual that we have built and that we will offer for sale and is offered for sale for those coaches that wish to have another resource for us. South Dakota State University has a judging guide that's available online as well. And then we have two other ones of a live animal evaluation and a guide for oral reasons. And hopefully we can answer some of those questions in a Q&A. But it's also important, and I know that a lot of counties realize this, is that we have other livestock producers that are in your area, or those that may be 4-H'ers as well. And if you can be able to highlight them and say, you know what, I got 4 Simmental heifers at home, and then do those outreaches. And I know, in fact, for a previous world, I grew up in South Dakota. And so I learned the betterment of my ways, and now I'm at Bison Nation. But I know a lot of the programs that we had and a lot of the practices that we had were at area livestock producers. And so if you can work with them, and in fact, what I would challenge you to is whether those are former judging team members or whether those are producers, is to ask for their opinions. If you can go to somebody that has a bull sale in the area or has some hogs that might be on feed, and then say, you know what, bring that class for us, and then we offer them to provide their input and of how they see the animals. And anytime we can amplify the amount of people that can help to train our young people, we can continue to learn.
One other comment here, especially on the livestockjudging.com site. It's not just a livestock judging resource. It also has horse judging classes on there. It also has meats judging classes on there. So, and you can have unlimited users on there. So our county purchases a subscription to that. So both our livestock judging team and our horse judging team utilize that each year, and that helps to also defer that cost down a little bit, that multiple teams are able to utilize that particular website.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. And in fact, I transition next of if we have classes in front of us, and I challenged, I have a graduate student, and in fact, just to give you a point of information, at North Dakota State University in our animal sciences department now, I have additionally 2 extra teammates that we didn't have in previous years. And so we have a young lady by the name of Devin Cunningham, who is an instructor and is serving as our animal sciences livestock judging coordinator and coach. And then also I have a graduate student by the name of Mr. Matthew Cheney, who actually originated from Maryland, but has had a successful junior college and senior college career. And we're excited to have both of them on board. And in fact, I tasked Matthew here of pulling together just a little bit of how we evaluate a class and how we pull this together. And I took a quick picture there on the left side, and in fact, from the top, and you can modify this and change it however you see fit. Please don't call this the gospel. But one of the things is that we put the class on the top, and if you so are available, put your placing up there just as a kind of pulling it together. 1, 2, 3, and 4. He chooses to do that on the first 4 lines. Sometimes I had done that in boxes of what would be the first thing. And what I always consider those is what hits me the hardest? What are the things that I want to know? What are the things that I want to record? And in fact, if it's a crossbred heifer class, I want to know that 1 is the red baldy heifer. I want to know that 3 is the black white flanked heifer. And in fact, I want to know that sometimes, even as I was pulling this together, I'd say HM, okay? Which in my world meant that 2 was heavy muscle. I'll worry about that later. But then and maybe 4, even as simplistic as putting, 4 was pretty. And so we could talk about that in femininity at a later time. But what strikes you first off when you see those? And I expect those descriptions to be done in the first 2 minutes. Because that allows us okay, this is what I caught from them right at the beginning. Now let's dig and kind of figure out, okay, which ones do I want to move up? Which ones do I want to move down? How can I be able to provide that information there? So one of the things is that as we read those down on the left-hand column, and in fact, if we were going to go 1 over 2 and 2 over 3 and 3 over 4, and in fact, we probably could have done that as well, but I'm just going to say that we place this 1, 2, 3, 4. And so the first top left would be 1 over 2. And then in the top right then, or what next, would be what I would consider to be called your grants. And so that's why 2 over 1 was better. And so if 1 over 2 was the best because she was structurally correct and she was super deep, but I think that 3 is better fronted, or excuse me, 2 is better fronted, then I'd put that there. The one that moves below there, kind of in a smaller box, would be the fault of that particular number 2. Why is number 2 second? And again, you can have some flexibility in how you guys want to do this, but we found this to work very, very well. And then similar as we move to the middle pair of 2 over 3 and then 3 over 4 of the same ideas. In my personal opinion, I think that anytime that we put a class of 4 together, no matter if they're 8 or 18, I think that it's best to take notes on all of those classes. And it just allows a recollection that if we want to think about that on the way home or wherever that may be, or at the next practice, we can be able to say, okay, now it could kind of come to my mind. And in fact, again, as I was informally a coach of being 6 years older than my youngest sister, Lacey, and I'm the eldest of 4, and Kayla and Tyler as well, is that if I was driving to practice, is that there would be reasons on the way back. They didn't know what class it was going to be, but it might have been market barrows or it might have been breeding ewes or whatever it was, but there would be reasons on the way back. And so we say, okay, pull out the Hampshire barrows. We're going to talk through it. And then you could provide a little bit of recollection from that. You got to decide where you want to be. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that are more patient and more talented than I, but I kind of dug at least early in my career in coaching my siblings before I moved to a collegiate coach as well. So one of the things is that even if we're taking those notes is that it provides us that decision-making and justifying it. And so one of the things that I think of, even when we have 9 boxes there, is that I want one reason at the very least, okay? Even at the lowest level, like the reason that 2 beat 3, why? And some of the times, particularly as we think about that, too commonly we say, well, I just like 2 better than 3. And to me, it's always best to ask of, well, there had to be some reason of what that was. And whether that was structure, whether that was muscle or trimness or volume or femininity or any of those particular things, just big picture that. And we can evaluate and pull in some of those more unique justifications at a later point in their career as well. So I've already said that we would have that information of their class, placing, animal ID, putting that up in the top. And then as we pull through our advantage, our grants, and our faults. As we move forward to second level, just with even these notes, in my personal opinion, this is of utmost importance, is prioritization and order. And so even as I said that 2 beats 3, and I want to know why 2 beats 3. And so if they're Angus heifers, I want to know that she's deeper, or that I liked her shoulder design better, or whatever that may be. And then tell me those in order. And so the judge says, well, if it's because we know that 2 is higher volumed and pounds heavier, that should be the thing that we lead off with. And I think when we get to second level, particularly in our seniors, is that prioritization and the order that you provide that information is very, very important. I don't want you to lead off with, I like 2 because she was better in her tail head. That probably wasn't the reason that she placed over 3. Now you can add that in, but being able to look at that prioritization, and I always, even when I was taking notes, is if I have 3 different things and look at the buzzwords that I was looking at, whether those were volume and structure and then the tail head, to put those in an order and maybe put a 1 around it, a 2 and 3. And you don't always write those down in order when you only got 12 minutes. But when you go through those, you can help to get that a little bit better. Second level again, and even more not more important, but just moving on in terms of just where we can be, allows us the transitions of saying, now in my bottom decision, I still like the structural correctness of 3/4, whatever that may be. And so putting those transitions in, and in fact, also that I'm not touching on a whole bunch on this one, but voice inflection. And of course, even again, as I'm more senior on this, is that I once got to hear Dr. Skurupey, provide some of those transitions as she was a young person in the collegiate level. See, she won't admit it there, but what she was so awesome with is that there would be in a voice inflection and say, now in the bottom decision, or whatever that may be, and it just draws you back. And so if you could have some of those pauses in between, and then open it up and go, and allow that to kind of be a separation between a top pair, a middle pair, and a bottom pair. I use the words power statements, and again, that's probably something that you may or may not be aware of. And if it's a market animal class, and if it's steers, then I would expect that if I have a class of 1/2, that one has, due to his advance and condition, would allow that number 1 steer to be more apt to grade in the choice grade and provide more premium on the rail. Or wherever, if it was from a breeding decision, its extra growth numbers allows me to expect that its progeny are going to be heavier at weaning and return a higher dollar value if you were going to sell those at weaning weight. And so I call them power statements. I don't know what everybody else does. They might have something that you can use any different thing, but that becomes truthfully my carcass merit decision or my breeding projection. And the last thing, and it's certainly last on this card, and I bolded it on purpose, but it's the toughest thing to teach. And then I hate to say this and say we're doing a seminar and saying, hey, we should teach people how to do this. And in fact, it just takes some repetition, and it takes being able to write that information down and then having those people walk through it and say, you know what, this is why I have 2/3 in my middle decision. And in fact, if I remember that it was volume and then structure and then tailhead, then that's the only 3 things that I needed to remember. And once you get in the senior level, if I decided that, hey, 2 is deeper ribbed, or say, hey, 2 has more volume, whatever terms come out of your mouth, okay, in a pressure situation, at least that allows me, because we know that if we've given reasons, there's been a time like, oh man, I forgot what 3's grant was, okay? And well, 3's grant was femininity, okay? And so I think that 3 was cleaner through her throat latch and appeared to be fresher and more feminine. And so if I know what that one word is, building and transitioning those terms can help us out. And so I know that was a lot of talk on a relatively tough portion, but then trying to think about that. And in fact, for coaches, I think it's also fun of, even if you were to go to some of those online judging programs, of saying, okay, let's judge this one and let's look at it and say, okay, this is what had an impact for me. And then ask them the following day, like, why did number 1 barrel beat number 2 barrel? And see if they can visualize why that happened.
And just to piggyback, oh, go ahead.
Before you go on, Travis, one of the most common questions that I get is that if you show your picture of what the reasons piece of paper should look like, to make that work, do you have to have the class placed before you start taking notes? Well, for the most part, it certainly helps, but that's a good question, Rick. And so what I'm going to tell you, for an example, thanks for bringing that up, is that on this class of fake Angus heifers that I talked, all right, is that I knew 1 was good, okay, and I knew 4 was bad. And so even when I described 2 and 3, I'm going to put 2/3 and put 3/2, and then I'm going to start. If it's something that's very tough for me, I'm going to start in that pair and make those decisions. And so I'm going to write 2/3, and then I'm going to put why 2 beats 3, and I'm going to put in the other box why 3 beats 2. And in fact, if I need to go back, then I can do that just a little bit quicker and not jumble my reasons. Because one of the things, particularly as young people, is that
like, okay, I had it, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you know what? I just looked at them at the end and I switched it to 2, 1 at the top. Well, that's going to change a lot of the comparisons that you have if you do that at a later point within the class. And so what I would be able to provide in terms of positive ideas there is to identify if I have any question, pick the toughest pair and start digging from there. And if I have 3 of them that I don't know, and I only know that 4 went to the bottom, then maybe take more notes at the top and be able to what those descriptions are before you start filling those in. Dr. Skurupey, I'm going to heed to you in terms of advice on this one as well. It's a great question.
It is a really good question. And, Rick, I love that you asked that, because you have to see every animal and you only have so long. 12 minutes isn't very long. And so you don't want to stand at one animal or just stare at one animal and just start writing. And so teaching your kids to make sure they get something down, like Dr. Hoffman originally said, on each animal before that 12 minutes is up and you have to rotate to another species is critical. And so, making sure to test your kids on making those quick decisions, which is a really valuable life skill to teach them. And kind of piggyback on the very last bullet there, visualize, not memorize. I judged collegiate for Colorado State University, and I remember the day that my coach knew that I had memorized my set. So he took away my notes and he was like, go back, work it up, and give it back to me. I was like, what do you mean? I don't have any notes to look at. He's like, I don't care. You figure it out. And had he not done that, which totally made me cry, I wouldn't have been the judger that I was. And so I went on to coach for 6 years at the University of Florida and walked away with a reserve world championship team. And I also did it to one of my members who came away with being an overall reasons talker at one of our contests. So it is hard to teach your youth not to memorize and just build that confidence that they know what they saw and they can recall it. They just have to work at it.
Well, one thing I will say in terms of just practices, and I use those of whether they were video classes or even pictures and had pictures in front of them, is that take them one step at a time, particularly when we're thinking about young people. And this time I'm going to call it a class of Hampshire ewe lambs to mix it up. All right. And so if the 4 individuals that I have at practice, maybe I have 14, but if I have 4 individuals at practice and say, okay, here's the pictures. And even if I have printouts of those 4 pictures, and then look at each one of those 4 animals and then pull those pictures away. And then we're not challenging them at the same level of seeing, oh my gosh, I just saw 10 classes. And then we pull those pictures away. Then we say, what did 1 look like? Please describe number 1. Please describe number 2. And in fact, then when you're at practice, then you could say, okay, this is how you describe number 1. Here's your picture back. Is there anything that you would add in terms of describing that one? And then it's not about which one won. It's about, can you describe that animal? And so then that becomes a really good tool on being able to say, okay, this is how I can get just a little bit better. Because those that make it to the highest level, there's, like Dr. Skurupey said, there's no memorization. And in fact, it's all up in your head. And as tricky as this is, of whether you were cheating on a biology test because all the answers were in my head and I learned them, right? And so a similar type thing. So.
And I know this is probably in the same breath, and I apologize, Dr. Hoffman, if you're going to touch on this, but we also always practice popcorn reasons. So you didn't even watch a class. It's just learning how to take notes and follow a particular format. And so, it's working as a team. So we'd say, Travis, you're going to take the top pair and the introduction, go. Brian, you're going to take the middle pair and the transition into the final. And Rick, you're going to take the final pair and give me your final placing. So then they also have to listen to each other, because Rick would have to know how Travis placed it in order to finalize that pair. It's a great work through of working on notes and just the rhythm of presenting reasons.
And thank you, Leanne. And another thing that I would add here, and Brian, you can switch to the next slide as I transition my thoughts here. But one of the things is that use household items, and this sounds so wild, okay, of whether it was a shoe. One of the things that I would say that I've done is candy bars, and I've also done coffee mugs. Okay, and so I like candy bars of whatever those may be. And so, in fact, if we were to say that I have a Snickers, a Twix, a Milky Way, and then to be rebellious, then I put in a Spree. Okay, and so if those that are aiming for chocolate, the Spree went a distant fourth, right? And so then it's not even about just the evaluations, and they can think of whatever terms that they may want. It doesn't even matter anymore. You know, I picked the Snickers because of its amazing texture advantages over the Milky Way, whatever that may be, you know, and so that way they don't even have to recall Hampshire Barrow #1 because they can go to the other side of the room and know what a Twix looks like, and know what a Milky Way looks like, and know what the Snickers is, and know what the Spree is. And so that way then it allows you the opportunity to truthfully say, oh, all right, Tuesday practice, it's going to be fun, okay? And they're like, Mom, I went home and it was awesome, and the Twix won, okay? And so that allows you the opportunity to then, truthfully, even then, it's not recollection of was that Hampshire Barrow better on his rear leg, but then you can describe it, and then you can say, hey, how did you place those candy bars? And then they can do that because they didn't write notes on it. They had to make decisions of why that happened. So thanks for letting me provide a little bit of thoughts and ideas on there.
And that's a huge confidence builder. So that gives those kids some of that skill set to be like, oh, I really can do this. And so I love that Dr. Hoffman talked about, we did that all the time.
Well, in keeping us moving here on our oral reasons, and so I'm going to start at the left-hand side of things that I feel that are important, and it's much easier to write them down, I promise you that, than to perfect them with our young people. But it's confidence is first and foremost. And in fact, if it was up to me, maybe I should have probably just capitalized that. And so what I want people to think, whether they're 8 or 18, is it's their chance to tell the story. And I want them to know that they got it right. If they did not get it right, we'll learn about that afterwards. But I do not want people to come in with as much indecision, because that doesn't help you. You're like, oh man, I don't know if I got it right, or this one was tough. And you get to tell that story of why you placed it the way you did. Another easier thing to write on a PowerPoint than to teach to young people is eye contact. And in fact, a lot of young people, that intimidates them. And that's one of the things that from a 4-H standpoint that we have the opportunity to help build character and to build presentation skills. And if it's very hard for young people, or they tend to look down, several people will suggest that just look at that individual 2 foot above their head and say, look at the wall above their head. And at least that way you're not looking exactly at them and get flustered and can't remember. And that'll at least allow you the opportunity, instead of wanting to look at your notes or wanting to your eyes to go from back and forth and left and right and up and down. And certainly it lacks in terms of the confidence that you have. I think that it's important that you have a strong voice. We're past the point. I know when I was a young person, and apparently when there was junior college coaches and some senior colleges, is that people would put their hands behind their back and go to a 45-degree angle and decide that they were giving a lecture and trying to shout at the judge. And we're past that. And in fact, provide some charisma. And one of the things is even as I describe voice, is voice inflection of, even if I move to a bottom decision and say, but the third place female, she just lacks some of the rib shape and skeletal dimension, and I marked her third. And if you bring that back and then you say, okay, now it's go time, but it's my bottom decision that makes sense to me because, or whatever. And so when you can do that, that's again moving forward in terms of what we want to do. But I think it's important to challenge any of our people. And when you can do that with being powerful at times and then pulling it back potentially in some of those faults and then putting the pauses in the right spot, it allows us to be just a little bit more impactful. we said in terms of dress for our 4-H contest is that you follow those. And of course, when you're in the FFA contest, you're wearing official dress. If those aren't part of it, I prefer certainly as professional as you're willing to go. I've never marked anybody down for wearing a suit coat or being looking too sporty. Okay. But if you can have that and look professional and look well kept, that allows us to be good. Two things that are contradictory here in terms of time of efficient, because we can be concise and comprehensive. We want to, as a reason taker, I want to know what you saw on that class of market steers. But I also need to realize, and you need to realize as young people and as coaches, is that I have to listen to 60 people, 80 people, 100 people, 120 people, whatever that may be. And if you are more concise, that allows you the opportunity. And we all know young people that have came in and tried to give a minute and 47 seconds or 2 minutes and plus reasons. And still we can provide that to be a little bit more concise, and that allows us a better mark for them. I summarize reasons in accuracy and flow, animal identification of our March-born bull, our blue butt gilt, our dark-hided weather. Being able to put those in as identifiers allows us the opportunity. I showed you where to put the strengths and weaknesses in the reasons format. And then as I described of the power statements, and you can't overestimate the importance of that, because then I actually have an understanding of truthfully why you did it. I heard the buzzword. I know why you did it. You prioritize those buzzwords. But if you can do it with carcass merit or a breeding projection of saying that the high growth bull should project off more weaning weight and tip the scale more with their progeny, whatever that may be, that fits that scenario, that's good. Our flow is important, and that's our opening, pair discussions, top, middle, and bottom, advantages, then grants, and then fault. And in fact, some reasons takers might be used to thinking of like, okay, this is what I would expect. Some may think that, you know what, I just want to talk number 1, and then talk number 2, and then talk number 3, and talk number 4, and that's okay. But that doesn't give us as much comparisons about those. And then the closings. Truthfully, again, I'm now getting on my own soapbox, but I don't need to hear, and these are the reasons why I placed the market barrows. I already heard them. Get out, get over it. Next.
Can I inject something here?
Please.
As we're working with oral reasons and going through practice and critiquing our students with oral reasons, one of the things I like to do is videotape these reasons and play back to those kids because, you know, you can try and tell them while you're bouncing around, you're moving too much, you're looking off in other directions. While they sit there and will argue with me and say, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. Until they see it on video, it's hard to correct. But once they see it on video and actually notice that they're doing some of those things, then they can start correcting it and working on some of those things.
Thank you, Brian. I couldn't agree more. And in fact, we have mirrors, people can watch in the mirror. And then, of course, we have the option with the videos, and that can not be underestimated as a tool to kind of see what they did and see what they can do. And in fact, the glorious thing about that is that you can see progress as well. And if at the end of a year or at the end of 4 years of being on a judging program, they can watch the first set and like, holy moly, I wish that I was a lot better a little bit earlier. And so, in fact, that then proceeds to be a tool. So that's a quick transition, and we'll go through EPDs, and in the reference of time, kind of move this on to my colleague, Brian Zimprich. And I apologize if I went a little longer than maybe I should have there, but I wanted to describe some of the things. And so we have in general. Yep.
Travis, I'm just going to shut on this really quick. Reason should last. This is a great question. Reason should last no longer than 2 minutes. And in fact, at the national contest, you will probably get time penalties. I know in equine you do. So really no longer than 2 minutes is ideal for a set of reasons.
And for a quick, my thoughts is that a minute 20 to a minute 40 is way more preferred than the 2 minutes. And so, in fact, to be over 140 We're going to need EPDs and descriptions and stuff. So I guess in generalities, yes, no more than 2. 130 is a nice target point. So our expected progeny differences, they are selection tools and they're used. And that's the reason that we look at those as young people so that we can continue to learn. And in fact, again, my father's in the midst of bull sales season. And so he's digging through all the EPDs from every catalog that comes through. And operations should and could use those. More so we use those in beef cattle than we commonly do in swine. And in fact, we're just getting to the point of where we're using some in sheep as well. It is an indication of some of the live animal traits. And we have some examples here on the scenario, but it should provide you some ideas of what to do with your scenario. And so they're not just random numbers. They were put together for a reason. And those should help you in your class placing and at least provide some thought process. Now, don't go just on those, but it provides you the opportunity. And then, as I said, the breeding projection statement of, this gilt's high growth data would help me to think that one's progeny are going to get there earlier, or whatever that may be, or the ribeye area advantages and the marbling advantages would help to think that the progeny of this beef bull would help us in terms of premiums at the rail. So we have some additional examples, but the Southdown ewe lambs, I'll swing, but I didn't do a very good job on that, Brian, because the Southdown ewe lambs, this is just a quick example, and I'll move forward. This one has a 60-day and weaning weight ratio and 120-day weight ratio. This was from a contest that we were at this fall. It has codon 171. Codon 171 is for Skurupey resistance. RR is the most preferred Skurupey codon information, and then QR is less preferred, and QQ is the least preferred. NN, and for the most part, where past spider genes does not have a carrier trait. NS is what would be the carrier. And so on these, it has the birth date, the birth type, and then the rear type, because in the lambs, some of those lambs don't make it past. And in fact, 1 and 2 were born with one more than what they were raised, or they pulled those off, and then they had the ratios. Thanks for letting me talk about the quick portion of those Southdown ewe lambs, Brian.
So Travis, in your opinion, how much emphasis do you put on a paper class such as the Southdown ewes in comparison to visual appraisal?
Awesome. That's the most vague question that one can have. So the one that's in front of me, the number 3 has the poorest data at 60-day and at 120-day, and she is behind because 1 and 3 have QR that doesn't help them. The information on grow, the number 2 has the highest 60, number 4 has the highest 120. I know that there's a little mini nick on number 1 on the QR. And so in generalities, I don't want to make a decision, but I think 2 and 4 are at the top. But 1 could move up a spot. But 3, at least on paper, is last. And so I'm going to have to find a big reason for number 3 to move up. Or if 3 moves up, maybe it's only over number 1. So right now, I have a 2-pair class of 4 and 2 and 1 and 3, and then I start looking at them. But I have this information even while my back is to the wall. So that gives me a little bit of idea. And we have some other ones, but right here with this information, it's a 2-pair class. Let's go look at sheep and then figure it out. And then I can move those if I so wish. And maybe number 1 can make it in the top pair and switch with 2 or 4. And 2 and 4 with this information, I have to evaluate sheep. And number 3 is subpar. And I'm going to have a very tough time moving 3 off the bottom.
So you like to get a preliminary potential placing before you look at the class?
I do, or at least identify where the strengths are.
Got it.
So this is a group of ewes, and I'll draw your attention first off to the box on the right. And so what we look at, I'm digging from right, is codon 171, is that number 1 has a QR that's less preferred. We said that. But in the growth numbers, they went pretty much obviously backwards of 4.321 in 120 and 4.321 in 60-day and 4.321 in terms of percent lamb crop. Now this one, different than the swine one that we have coming up, says this is how you place the class, okay? This one, there's not very much differences amongst those. And in fact, on the left-hand side, these are actual information on ewes that were sold just this past year. And these would be the EBVs, the estimated breeding values. And just to go across from left to right is birth weight, weaning weight, post-weaning weight eye muscle depth, post-weaning weight fat, and then Carcass Plus, which is pulls together an index for those. And you can go back and look at this presentation if you so aspire. But right now, number 4 wins on that one. Number 3 goes second. And one of the things that I'd point you to is that now I have a talking point between 1 and 2, because even though that 2 was better in Carcass Plus, the number 1 has a higher post or the eye muscle depth. And so I like the muscle in number 1 over the one that's negative in 2. And then I got to look at those. And if those mean that I need to switch them, that might be the case. Right now I'm 4.321, but I might see enough muscle in the number 1 that I would think that that's an advantage. And the growth information goes in line. And so that's an easy scenario that it's 4.3, and then I got to look at them between 1 and 2. Next. The next one should be just what I put in here for a reference for you. And in fact, of sheep EBVs, and I'm not going to talk through this, even if Dr. Skurupey wants me to, but I'm not. Okay, so don't worry. But these are some of the topics and the EBVs that are available. And the reason that I do this is because most people are familiar with what we do in the beef cattle world and are familiar with what we do in the swine, but we hadn't been as familiar with sheep. And this is one of the things that we're kind of looking at. But I showed you the most important ones of birth weight, weaning weight, post-weaning weight, and then moving to muscularity for the most part of eye muscle depth and weaning weight, and Carcass Plus is an index. So this is a scenario from our 2021 NDSU Little International. And so it says that that first off, it's dry, and we have easy fleshing heifers. And then it also says that we have labor at calving time is limited. And so it tells me to discriminate against heifers with less desirable than breed average calving /birth weight EPDs. And so if you're a North Dakota livestock coach, hopefully you'll come to our NDSU Little I here in just a short 10 days. But when I read down on this, I evaluate where breed average is, and I identify that number 4 and number 5 are below the number for calving ease and above the breed average for birth weight. Both of those are negative to what we want to accomplish. 4 and 5 are culled. It doesn't matter what they look like. I told you in this scenario that they will be culled. And then we have a heifer number 2 that is way low in terms of weaning weight and yearling weight, and we want some growth as well. So if you were an instructor and you had this sheet of paper, 4 and 5 are culled, 2 is culled. Now I start looking at cattle and see which ones are that fit my my world, and all I got to do is find one more that fits us. And so I put this together, but at least it provides us the information. The one thing that I did not include on this, because we're selling calves at weaning, is marbling EPD. And so we have calving ease, birth weight, weaning weight, yearling weight, milk, ribeye area, and we need calving ease, and then an all-purpose index for Simmental cattle. We have a swine option with our Yorkshire gilts. And in fact, this scenario, if there was any scenario that said disregard the data, this would be the one, because it says we're using it as replacements in a show pig operation for crossbred barrows and gilts, which kind of means just use the good ones. But here, when we look at these, there's information that you can get. And so what I've identified on number born alive is that 2 was not very good. 2 was not very good on 21-day litter weight. Back fat was better if you prefer them to be trimmer, but that's not a game breaker on breeding gilts. And then the days EPD, which we want to be more negative, is that number 4 has that advantage. because it's the lowest number. And so that, in fact, would get us to a good spot. Number 3 had the highest. So number 3 is maybe slower growing. I'm just going to say that there's differences between 2 and 3 that you would talk about. And I would see no reason with this data in front of me to not have 1 and 4 in the top and 2 and 3 in the bottom, and then sort those 2 pairs. Thanks. So our last portion here, and I've used almost an hour for us, is let's judge of these 4 heifers. And we're going to give you 30 seconds. And Dr. Skurupey was not ready for the Jeopardy theme, but nor do we wish for Brian to hum it. So we're just going to allow you 20 seconds, 30 seconds to look through these. If you have a sheet of paper, you can write down your idea and write down your thought. And truthfully, we have a reason set that was put together by a very, very talented junior college coach to describe these animals and to dig through those. And so this is one of the reasons why with those online judging programs is that it allows us so much flexibility and say, okay, let's judge some red Angus heifers, and you can do that, and it costs you, and you can get great learning out of it in 40 minutes and then talk through all of it that you so aspire.
I love it. And I don't know if you do this in livestock, Dr. Hoffman, but in horse, if the top pair you say one particular item, like shorter over the top line, I don't want to hear the same term in the other pairs. And so this is a perfect opportunity to identify different ways to say the same thing in your different pairs, just to bring that creativity into your sets.
There's many ways to say that one is deeper bodied. How's that? So you can talk lots and lots of different things, or length of spine, and whether it's length of hip or length of from its shoulder forward and additional femininity. But there's lots of ways, whatever that buzzword is, and you allow that to be a part of it and offer some flexibility for our young people as they're presenting them. Okay, and so ladies and gentlemen, to see if you got a 50 on the class, and again, I should have had people put it in the chat, but that's okay. We're going to dig on from a time restrictions. And this class was put together of 1, 4, 3, and 2. Okay, and so they chose that the number 1 was the most problem-free heifer, and liked the bone and the foot size, and likes actually the femininity, likes the shoulder structure more so than the number 4. Number 4 gets a little coarse. Number 4 is not as attractive in terms of her neck set, nor the thinness of her neck and femininity. If you take a 4/1, I will not call you wrong, because 4 looks more like a commercial kind of a female. And in fact, myself might take the biggest cut of the day. So that's how it went. But we know that those 2 were pretty good. We know that 3 comes back, and as they said here, she reads more excessive in the set to her hock and flattens up more from behind is the fault for her. And that's true. She gives up certainly skeletal width to either 1 or 4, but she's pretty. But still 3, in the bottom, to me, it's, and what I like here is that they characterize the bottom pair. And I didn't talk about that very much, is that it's a bottom pair, of attractive fronted female, of attractive fronted cattle. And I really like that when you add that in. But then they said 3 is higher performing, and we know that she's more correct, and we know that she's more maternal in her body type, because within this particular group of 4, number 2 doesn't have as much rib shape, and they described it as the shallowest and greenest bodied, and is still upright in her angles. And so that she's a little bit more restricted in both her shoulder and her hock past her in the ground as we view it from behind. And so that's a good option to be able to pull together a quick evaluation that's a class. And if you were to read that class, Dr. Skurupey, or read those officials with a critique, you'd still be under 1:20. And so that's descriptive as you can be, and still under 1:20, and you're in and out, and you were concise and comprehensive. Brian?
So this class, just for reference purposes, is a class from judgingpro.com. And This is actually a free class. And if you go to their Facebook page and like and follow their page, every week or every 2 weeks, they put up a different class such as this. And then 3-4 days later, they'll come back with the official placing and reasons on that class. So they do that on their Facebook page. They give you free classes. It's not video classes, but it's picture classes, and still one more option. If you don't want to pay that $250, here's another option to get some good classes to work on. Okay, so we're gonna dive quickly into our Livestock Quiz Bowl contest. And here in North Dakota, our Livestock Quiz Bowl contest is a relatively new contest for our youth here in North Dakota. I think we've been doing Livestock Quiz Bowl about 5 or 6 years now, if I am not mistaken, Leanne.
Yes, that is correct.
So again, just like our livestock judging, we have some different opportunities for our youth. We do have our state contest the day after our state livestock judging contest. We do this because we feel that those kids kind of, or that group of kids is going to be probably our same group of kids for both contests. So, and we can eliminate some extra travel, some extra time spent that we could work with the same kids on 2 different contests at the same time. So we hold this contest at NDSU this year at the Glen Hill STEM Center. We do have 3 different group or age groups for our skill or quiz bowl contest, and our juniors are 8 to 10 as of September 1. So they follow our traditional club year. But then our intermediate and our senior youth, intermediates are 11 to 13 as of December 31, and our seniors are 14 to 18 as of December 31. And we use December 31 because that's kind of the same time frame that the national contests use for their age group. So that way we fit into their requirements for those teams that may get the opportunity to travel to a national contest. The national contest, there's been some juggling on where this National Livestock Quiz Bowl contest is being held. For a few years, the contest or one of the national contests was held in conjunction with Exarban down at Grand Island, Nebraska. But now they took that out of there and have moved that over to Louisville during the North American Livestock International Livestock Exposition. Same time frame as what that livestock judging contest is in mid-November. There's also the opportunity to take a team over to Denver at the Western National Roundup, and that occurs that first week of January that just concluded here. So we kind of leave that travel option up to that first place senior team if they want to make the trip to Louisville or over to Denver to participate in either one of those contests to represent North Dakota. So our general rules for Livestock Quiz Bowl is North Dakota, we require the 4-H dress code, which for the top is a white, green, yellow, or gray shirt. It can be short sleeve, long sleeve, with a 4-H emblem affixed to the front of that shirt. It can be a patch that is pinned on, sewn on, glued on, or it could be a pressed on, many different options there. So, and then we prefer that they wear pants that are dark color, nice pair of shoes, preferably not tennis shoes. Again, no electronic devices. used in the holding room or during the contest, or in the contest rooms. And this goes for contestants, coaches, parents that are watching the quiz bowl contest in the contest rooms. We don't allow any electronic devices in there. This just allows so we know that the contest is fair. We're not, no one is recording the questions and answers, so they can go back out and give away what the questions are to the next teams that are coming in to participate and so on and so forth. So we do not allow electronic devices in those rooms. No notes or other resources are allowed in the contest room or at the competition table, but we can, those contestants can utilize those notes as long as they're not electronic down in the holding room while they're waiting for their next turn in the contest room. Our teams will consist of 4 to 5 team members. 4 members make up a team. A 5th member can be an alternate member. It can be transferred in throughout the contest. And we'll get into that a little bit more here shortly. In the holding room, only participants can be in that holding room. And again, during the matches up in the contest room, we don't allow any note taking during that portion of the contest. We don't allow recording or use of the cell phones, just so it keeps the matches fair. So if you have a 5-member team, that fifth member is an alternate. It must be named prior to the match. Your alternates must attend all matches their team is involved in. And an alternate can be substituted at the completion of a phase. And that alternate must remain in the contest throughout that phase before they can be substituted out again. No substitutions are allowed during a phase unless the moderator deems an individual cannot continue to play. Maybe they're sick during that part of the, or they get sick or whatever happens. Some things can come up that participant cannot continue on. So those exceptions we do allow. When we go into the contest room, only one coach is designated during that given round, and the coach is the only person that can ask for substitutions, and the coach is the only person that can challenge a question or an answer. So that's why we can only designate one coach during the match. If a 4-person team enters a contest and a member is unable to continue, no alternate is available. The team will still be allowed to continue with 3, but that 4th seat during the head-to-head competition will be forfeited, and no bonus points will be allowed to the 3-member team unless both teams end up having only 3 members during the contest.
And just to reiterate that rule is very specific to North Dakota. And so just making sure that in your state, you might have different rules. So make sure you're very cognizant of the rules that you're entering into the contest you're competing in.
Okay. So this is kind of how our Quiz Bowl contest structure is set up, or our competition room. So up in front, we've got the moderator. That individual is asking the questions, designated who can answer a question, so on and so forth throughout the competition. In this picture, the judge is up at the top of the screen. That individual, if there is a challenge of a question or a question may not answer, or a youth may not answer the question exactly how it's on the card, that judge will have the discretion to allow the answer if it is close enough, or deem it not a correct answer. So they are the ones that will have final say in the questions and answers of the contest. Down below is our Scorekeeper Timer. They keep track of time when a question, or how much time an individual has to answer a question based on when the question was finished or being delivered. And then they also keep track of the score. And in some cases, we may also have an extra scorekeeper to help keep or take some of the burden off of that timer. Up on top, or over to the right, we have our two teams, and this will come in handy for visual as we get into the next part of this presentation. When we talk about head-to-head competition, each one of these individuals will be against each other. So seat one will be against seat one from their respective teams, and they will get a question that only those two will get to answer. The first one to buzz in will get to get the opportunity to answer it. And then we go through 2 against 2, 3 against 3, 4 against 4. We start back over and with 1, and we go through that rotation twice. So the head-to-head, 8 questions.
1 second, and you probably already say this, if you want to go back one really quick, just to kind of complement this. Whoever sits down in chair 1, that is the captain. So if the kid sits there and doesn't want to be the captain, which Brian's going to elaborate on why that's important in terms of they're the ones that get to answer questions at specific phases. Once they sit down there, they are the team captain. So just reiterate that back to your kids. You know, if you don't want to play team captain, make sure you decide that before you walk into the room to start your match and sit in either chair 2, 3, or 4.
Thank you, Leanne. So phase 1 is our head-to-head competition. Again, 8 questions are asked during this phase. Seat 1 against seat 1 of team A and B. 2 against 2, 3 against 3, and 4 against 4. And we go through that rotation twice. Therefore, we have our 8 questions. Only the individuals in those specific seats get to answer the question at their time. The first person between 1 and 1 to buzz in gets the answer. They cannot receive help from anyone. They cannot ask their teammates for help. If they buzz in, they're the ones that need to answer. Once they buzz in, they have 10 seconds to start that answer. A correct answers receive 1 point. Incorrect answers in our senior division will lose a point. Junior and intermediates, we are trying to encourage them to answer questions. So we have decided to not deduct any points for wrong answers during this phase. Again, that's for the junior and intermediate divisions. So again, another part of this, if team A, if the team member in seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, and seat 4 all answer a question correctly during the head-to-head phase, they've got these little cards in front of them that they can turn around. And once they all have a card turned around indicating they've answered the question correctly, that team will receive 2 extra bonus points.
And basically, just to give you guys an idea, that card has a plus on one side and a negative on one side. And so when they turn it around to the plus, that helps the scorekeeper identify that they answered that correctly.
So, and then if each one of those team members answer their question correct to the first 4 questions, they would earn 2 bonus points, and then they get to flip those cards over and start over. And if they were to answer all 4 of those questions right the next time through, they would gain another 2 points. So, but once we end the head-to-head phase, those correct answer cards get flipped back to negative, and they do not carry over to the next phase. Our next phase, phase 2, is a team phase, and we have 8 questions again during this phase, and this is team participation. Each team will get 4 questions asked to them, and we alternate from team to team. We flip a coin before the match starts to decide which team will start, and then rotate after each one. During this time, the team will have 10 seconds to discuss and start their answer. For each correct answer, they will receive 1 point. Incorrect answers will not receive any point deductions. Again, they can discuss the question before answering. And this is where the seat 1 is very important. Only the team captain can report the answer to the moderator. If anyone else speaks after that 10 seconds from that team or any place else, no points will be awarded to that team. So only that team captain can report the team answer to the moderator to be accepted. So phase 3 is our toss-up and bonus phase. Here we've got 16 questions, and every 4 questions, a bonus question is attached to it. And during the toss-up phase, anyone can answer or buzz in and answer. So everything is open to everyone. If you buzz in, you've got 10 seconds to answer. You cannot ask your teammates for help. You cannot ask for any other help in the competition. So it's up to that individual to answer that question if they buzz in. If you get the answer correct, you get 1 point for your team. Incorrect answers, again, senior division will lose a point. Junior and intermediate, we encourage them to answer questions, so no points are deducted if they answer it correctly. Let's see. When we get to that 4th toss-up question, the team that buzzes in, if they answer that question correctly, that team will then get a chance at a bonus question. And if during that bonus question, the team will get to communicate with one another. They will have 10 seconds again to communicate and deliver their answer to the moderator. And let's see, if they answer that bonus question correctly, they will receive 3 bonus points, I believe. Again, we go back to if a team member or if your team members all answer a question correctly during this phase, you can also earn 2 more bonus points for your team. If the toss-up question with the bonus attached is not answered correctly, the bonus question disappears. It is not put into play at any point during that contest. So the only way that bonus question gets asked is if that toss-up question gets answered correctly. So again, here's our bonus questions. 10 seconds to answer. Only the team captain is allowed to answer. Deliver that answer to the moderator. Just like before during the team competition, if anyone other than the team captain tries to answer the question, no points will be awarded. Correct answers are 3 points, no deductions if answered the bonus question incorrectly. So some of the resources available, we utilize the Ohio State curriculum, their handbooks for the swine, sheep, beef, goat, rabbit, and dairy. That is where our questions will come from for the majority of our the questions that are utilized during the contest. And if you're interested, if you order through the state office, they can get a 20% discount on your order for those handbooks. And we're gonna open up that if anyone in North Dakota that would like to purchase a set of those handbooks, if you reach out to our state office by next Friday, the February 11th, and let them know that you want a set of these handbooks in your office, Leanne will work to get that ordered for you. And with shipping and everything, with the discount, it's going to be roughly between $100 and $125 for all 6 of those books.
Mhm.
And
Even if you are outside of North Dakota, I would be happy to order those for you as well if you want them, and we can just work on shipping.
okay. So each one of those books is a very good reference book, not only for Quiz Bowl function, but for several other activities that you may work with your youth on in those specific categories. Unfortunately, Ohio State does not have a current poultry handbook. They are working on something. So for us here in North Dakota, we've kind of went with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. They have a 4-H market broiler publication that we use to try to substitute for that resource handbook that Ohio doesn't use, but we also encourage to utilize some other resources out there to teach your youth about the poultry industry. Another resource that we'll utilize, and it's a requirement for our youth here in North Dakota, the 4-H side, to be able to participate at our state fair, is they need to go through the Youth for the Quality Care of Animals. So we utilize that curriculum to draw questions from as well. So those are the resources that we use here in North Dakota for our Quiz Bowl.
And just to let you know, the reason why we pick those resources from Ohio is those are the curriculum that are used at the national contest. And we really try to reflect our contests and parallel them with national level rules and regulations. That way, that senior team that makes it through to represent North Dakota at that national contest has a good idea of how those contests are supposed to be ran. I did put in the chat box, the top link is going to help you get to where those are located. I think that's the one to the goat resource one, but that gives you an idea where to go. And I totally just thrown this in there now because I imagine some of you are like, well, where do we get some buzzers? There's a lot of different options for buzzers out there. They can get pretty expensive. You can see that some of those first 2 that I listed are in the couple hundreds. Maybe you can find a sponsor. Those are the ones that we use. I will not say that they are super durable because a couple of them have already broken. So it might be just hit or miss. I know other teams have ones that are wireless. So there's a lot of options out there.
You know, and if you're working with a Quiz Bowl team, if you have access to a buzzer system, if you're in North Dakota or another state, and your state offices will allow you to check out a buzzer system, it is nice to at least get your kids to play with them at least one time before a contest, just to get the feel of it and understand how they work before throwing them into a contest and never playing with a buzzer before.
And don't think you have to have a buzzer system to kick off and just get your kids interested. You can do slap the table, you can raise your hand. Like there's various ways that you can identify which one of your youth is trying to answer. So. All right. These are just some fun things that we put together. And if you have something else and you're on here and you've coached this before and you want to reflect on this and help some other coaches on here, this is a perfect way to help everybody kind of identify, how do you get your kids like excited? So you can start, and when we think of livestock quiz bowl, there's a lot of species we have to cover: rabbits, poultry, sheep, goats, dairy cattle, you name it. And so it's a lot of information to get started, especially with our younger kids that we want to get involved in these kinds of things. And so even starting with breeds and colors, that is one of the easiest ways just to get started on different species. And so you could set up different tables and have the youth rotate around to those different tables and have maybe matching things. Maybe you have cards with or pictures of animals, and they have to put the identification onto the particular animal. Those are great ways. If you also through, correct me if I'm wrong, Brianna, or somebody, is it Ohio that has those kits as well? Am I thinking right? That has, like, they're kind of expensive. Like the horse one's $900 some, but they have a lot of cool cards in there too that are like breed cards, and you can flip them over and stuff like that too. You can send home things to the youth. Maybe you're super crafty and you have some flashcard stuff, like Brianna on here. She has a cricket and makes some really cool horse stuff, which we'll talk about on our next webinar next Wednesday. Send them home with a quick little quiz, and don't make it complex, like 5 questions max. You don't want them to be like, oh my gosh, I have homework from my 4-H club. We still want to make it fun. And you might even throw a fun question in there, like, get a couple IDs and then like, what's your favorite kind of cake? Just to make it fun and not all, just about focusing on livestock. And there's different matching games. I don't know if anybody uses Quizlet, but that's a fun app on your phone that they can connect. It's free unless you really want to upgrade, but it's super easy to put in questions and pictures and stuff like that if you have the updated version or the pro version. And then the kids can just log in on that on Quizlet on their app on their phone, and they can play lots of different games. They can sort it through matching. They can do fill in the blank. So that's a great one that's called Quizlet. Every day, maybe you're teaching something different. Maybe you're working on biosecurity one day and something else, and throw in 5 questions at the beginning or the ending of your club or meeting, just to get a couple things in to learn about. Maybe you do some team activities. Those are really fun because one, you're getting those kids in there to work as a team, and that helps them really start to work together. So that's a really fun opportunity for those youth. And I love this one. Have the kids write their own questions. That gets them in the content book. It gets them looking through different things and maybe start reading something and be like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know about that. So it's kind of fun to get them to write their own questions. This is something I used to do, is I would set up some things, because we all know kids love contests, especially if a candy bar's involved or something as a reward. And so I would set up some tables, and maybe on one table I would have all swine IDs. So maybe I have the pictures laying out, taped down, because everyone knows this is going to get crazy. And then I have the loose identification. So let's say I have, spotted, and then I'm going to have the term spotted on a piece of paper. So they have to run up there as fast as they can and put the term on the actual animal, and then run back. And then maybe, you have to work through so many tables. So you start one group at table A, start group 2 at table B, and then they can start running through. It's just a fun opportunity to get them to learn something in just a different match fashion. And then of course there's Jeopardy. That's always a fun one. I'll take, cattle for 4 or something, like that, and just go through the different species. Is there anything that, you guys do that anybody wants to unmute and talk about something fun on how they work and kind of infuse all this knowledge into their youth? Because I know it's a lot.
I know one that kids like is Kahoot. That's another popular free one.
Yes, that is a really good one. Thank you for putting that up there. Kahoot is another free app. It's a great opportunity for them, you as a coach, to jump on and put all the content that you want in there. And it's actually kind of fun because you can use that via, if you're trying to coach over a webinar or something, maybe you're doing something virtual, and Kahoot's pretty easy to use virtually as well. Thanks for saying that.
Okay, just kind of starting to wrap up here. Recruitment strategies, whether this is livestock judging, quiz bowl, look for those youth that are interested in livestock. And it may not be your traditional livestock kids. They may be some town kids that are really interested in livestock. You know, just because it's a livestock competition doesn't mean they need to have a background in livestock. Yes, it's helpful once in a while, but then on the other hand, some of those livestock kids come with their own thoughts on how they want to do things, and so in some cases we got to correct some of those as well. So but just look out for those kids that show interest in livestock. Which kids are hanging around the barns at the fair, that are always in the barns, that are always asking questions about livestock, those types of things. And look for the youth that want to be involved. Again, it may not be an individual that has a livestock background, but they want to be involved. They want to try something new. Get them involved. Don't discourage them. Get them involved, and those are going to be some of your better kids to participate in these events, because they actually want to be there and not being forced to do it. Look for or hold a mock judging contest or a quiz bowl event at your county fairs. Again, this kind of just demonstrates how these contests work, and let these kids kind of explore and see what it's about without pressure, and have some enjoyment with their friends. And so it gives them an opportunity just to explore what these different contests are in a non-threatening fashion sort of instance. So put together some of those types of contests. Have an introductory meeting and encourage everyone to come and learn about the program. Set up a meeting, maybe supper, just come and learn what it's all about. Get your feet wet, maybe throw up some sample judging classes on a video screen and see how people do. Talk about it. And what I like to try and do is tell kids and families that whether it's livestock judging or quiz bowl, they're not going to master it in the first year. There is a lot of content that individuals need to know from in either of these contests. So it takes time to build a knowledge base of these contests, and so that first year might be a real big learning curve. And as we get more into these contests, that learning curve gets less and less, and they're going to start moving up in the ranks in these contests as they get more experience, and they're going to feel better about it. So that first year is a lot of learning and may not necessarily do quite as well at the contest as what we'd like, but encourage them to keep coming back, because it'll keep getting better and easier year after year. And encourage your current team members to bring friends along to practices and try to get other people involved that way. Any other recruitment strategies other people use?
While we're waiting on some of those answers, I launched another poll just because we're curious how, your thoughts about this particular webinar. And when you leave this and you press the end button, you'll get a 2-question survey. If you can answer that too, those are written ones that you can type in and give us some valuable feedback so we can maybe host some more of these. And just kind of hitting on some of this too. You guys are coaches. You guys know the importance and the value being on any team brings, whether it's judging or quiz bowl. Those workforce readiness skills that they take away from these opportunities really empower those youth with skills to thrive. And it is just so valuable. So even if you're talking to a parent that's like, nah, I don't know that I have time, I really just not sure. We have a lot more athletic events. I'm not discriminating against athletic events. Those are fantastic too. Just really encourage the skills that kids walk away from being on these kinds of teams. Like I, for one, will fully admit, had I not been on a livestock or a horse judging team, I would not have the communication or public speaking skills that I have today. I wouldn't be where I am today. I don't know if Dr. Hoffman would simulate that same perspective, but just something to think about.
Okay, and as you want to continue with that poll, go right ahead. And I guess at this point, we're going to open it up for any questions that you may have, whether it's along the livestock judging sector or the livestock quiz bowl program. If you've got any questions, if you want to type them in the chat or open up your mic, feel free to do so.
From the Facebook page. So we have horse judging and hippology coming on next Wednesday. Then we're doing meat judging with reasons. For those of you that are on this call, North Dakota is bringing reasons back to our meat judging contest. So we're going to walk through how to get coaches coaching for reasons on meat judging. February 23rd, we're doing a quiz bowl, demonstration, illustrated talks, and public speaking for the horse community. And then on March 9th, Rick's going to take us away with dairy cattle judging. So we would love for you to come join us at any one of those. Spread the news. The more people we can have on here to have some dialogue and ask some questions, we love it. So we were just so thankful that you guys joined us today. And I really want to just lift you guys up because your passion for coaching for our youth is just so critical. So just know that we are so grateful for people like you.
Thanks, Leanne. One of the things I'd like to close with permission there is that, the importance of positive encouragement, I guess. Whether you're choosing to do any one of these, of whether it's horse judging and hippology or the livestock judging and the quiz bowl, is that I think that sometimes, at least for myself, of the competitiveness kind of shines through. And each time that we get all of our young people, whether they're 4-H or FFA individuals, is that each time that what we get in terms of experiences can be beneficial for all of those that are involved. And so feel free to, make sure that we remind the young people that, it's not the bottom pair that you switch, it's the top pair that you got right. And so just in terms of generalities. And so I think that when we think about it from an education standpoint and kind of pulling those together, and that's not new information to any of you guys, and I appreciate everybody from a coaching standpoint for taking time out of your day. But just to remember that, that we have the opportunity for those of you that are joining us as coaches to make positive impacts on youth. And we do that, and you do that, and lots of people do that. And I think that's an important thing to keep into consideration, is that irrespective of if you're first or you're last or somewhere in between, is that we get to have a positive experience and provide positive inspiration for young people. And so thanks for being involved with our talks tonight.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, and thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Hoffman. I'm all about winning. I'm one of the most competitive people out there in my athletics, horses, you name it. But just really remembering why we do what we do and bringing these kind of contests. It's not just about winning and collecting a belt buckle or an item that's going to collect dust. It's about the incredible skills that these youth walk away with that you've infused in them just by working with them and sharing your passion with them. So really lift that up, and just like Dr. Hoffman said, encouraging them to to keep going when it feels like I can't get anything right. I can't get this class right. You know, they're going to have those moments, but you're there to lift them up.